All right, so it looks like we're pretty much all here. Very good. So that means you all got the invitation. That's good. You never know with emails, they might go anywhere, including your junk box. So, all right, so let's see. The first thing we should probably do is look at the syllabus. Let me get that open here. And I was actually just getting ready to go into Blackboard. Actually, here, let's look at Blackboard instead. If you go into Blackboard, you'll see under our course, under course readings, there's only two things here right now. We've got a syllabus and we've got the notes for today, which is chapter 3. All right, we're going to start there. And so first, let's take a quick look at the syllabus so we know where we're going. I actually just realized there's a separate category for here, but that's okay. We can keep it all together in one place. And all right, so this is what we're looking at for this semester. So, of course, as you can see, the classroom is listed as online. This is an entirely online class. I know that all the other classes are online this week, but this class will stay online for the rest of the semester. And so we'll be meeting every Tuesday and Friday at this time. And so let's see, I've got my email address here. Now, I just want to point out that when I sent out the invitations, though, I didn't use that Manhattanville email address. I'll tell you why. I actually used my Gmail account, because what happens with Gmail is I have all your names in my your roster of names in an Excel spreadsheet. And in order for me to send you a group email, basically, in other words, one email that goes to everyone, I have to have the ability to copy all those email addresses in one batch into the email. And the Blackboard, I don't know what it is, but when I try to do this to the Manhattanville email, it doesn't actually allow me to do that. So I just find it more convenient to send it to you directly from my Gmail account. So that's why you received your invitation from my email account, a Gmail account rather than this account. So just in case, let me just write this down somewhere. It's draa2012@gmail.com. That's the one that I would use to send out your invitations. And now you can, if you need to write to me, you can use this email address, or else you can send it to my Manhattanville address, which is right here. Either one I'll see, but don't be shocked when you see your invitations coming from this address, because it's just easier, okay? I don't want to have to sit there and type 25 individual email addresses, which is what I would have to do with Manhattanville's email system. Instead, Gmail allows me to do it all in one shot. Okay, now, what else do we have here? This is supposed to be the address of our Blackboard. I suppose it might be. I've never actually used that link there. Instead, normally what you do is you go to the school's website and you log in and you go directly to Blackboard. And somewhere in there, you should see all of your courses. And hopefully nobody's having any technical issues with Blackboard. If you are, you can let me know and we'll get a hold of technical support. And then all of your course materials should be stored there. So far, I've only put in, as you can see, here we go, just the syllabus in chapter 3, but I will be updating those very, very soon. I want to make sure that all the notes are available as we go along so that you can look at them before the class starts. And so you'll have an idea of what we're going to be doing in each of our classes. Okay, so in other words, today we're doing chapter 3. I'm not sure if we're going to finish it or not, but whatever comes next, I'll make sure that those are all posted by the time we meet up again on Friday. Okay, so what else do we need to know on this syllabus? There is a book, and as far as I know, it is available in an electronic format. You should be able to get a copy that you can read on your computer. It shouldn't be too horribly expensive by the standards of textbooks, because it is, after all, a soft cover, but you know, textbooks are just horribly expensive. There's no getting around it. It's a very good book. And the notes are based entirely on this book. And if you haven't already bought it, you can still get one. And if you want to go to the bookstore and pick up a physical copy of it, they have them too. I don't know if the bookstore is even open right now, but it's possible if you prefer the actual physical book, you can get your hands on that at the bookstore. And we'll be covering many of the chapters in that book, but of course not all of them because, let's face it, we don't have that much time. But we're going to cover a very large amount of material in this class. So in fact, why don't we take a look at the topics that we'll be covering? And you can see it's a pretty long list. We're going to cover a very extensive selection of topics from microeconomics. And when you're done, if you choose to do so, you'll be ready to go on to a more advanced class, such as intermediate microeconomics, or maybe a more applied course like international trade or something along those lines. So before we go any further, I just want to show you a cool toy that Zoom lets us play with here. We have the ability to create polls. So what I often do in the beginning of a new class is ask everybody the following question. Hold on one second while I set it up. This is always an interesting question. Are you, oh no, hold on. Okay, so this is just a straight ahead yes or no question. Now, once I post it, you'll have the ability to vote. There we go. Let's just check this out, just out of curiosity. Now, of course, I can look this up on Blackboard anyway, but I was just wondering. Okay, well, that's not a huge percentage, but there's some of you, and that means you're going to go on and take more advanced courses, which means that all of this material will be extremely helpful to you because you'll need it for what's coming next. Now, the other question I always like to ask on the first day is this. All right, hold on. Okay, so the other one I always ask is whether or not you've taken macro or if this is your very first economics class. So, all right, let's run through that one. Okay. So what I'm seeing so far is that the majority of you have not yet taken macro. Now, I'm not sure if you're required to take it or not. I guess it depends on what you're studying. But I do want to point out that if you have taken macro before, some of the material in the early chapters here will overlap with what you've done in macro, but it won't last for very long. It can't really be helped. We don't want to assume any particular background in this class. So if you have taken macro, it can only help because you've already seen some of these early concepts. But after a couple of chapters, we'll be moving into some completely new territory. But you know what? More reinforcement is always good. So, all right, that's good to know. So let's see. Let's get back to that syllabus real fast. There we go. What else do you need to know? Let's see. So you got my information. You know when we're supposed to meet. You know that this is an entirely online class. Office hours, if you need to meet with me in quote office hours, you can actually send me an email and we can arrange a separate Zoom meeting, or else you can just simply send me questions by email. Okay, that always works. If you just want to know one thing, if you need to discuss the problem sets, that's different. Then maybe we should have a session. But for simple questions, you can just always send me emails. But I don't have regularly scheduled office hours. It'll be on an as-needed basis. Okay. All right. So again, I started to mention that we have all these wonderful topics to cover. And of course, you'll notice supply and demand is here. People who've had macro have already seen that before. And again, there's no harm in reinforcing this. But then after that, these are all purely micro topics. Okay. So from that point on, this should all be brand new to you, whether you've had macro or not. All right. Now, how about the actual grading? This is usually the first thing that everyone wants to know on the first day of a class. So how this is going to work is this. We're going to have a series of problem sets throughout the semester, but they're designed just to help you prepare for the exams. And so they're not actually going to count, but I'm going to post them on Blackboard, and then ideally you'll have them ready before we get to the next class where we will discuss them. But all of them will be designed to help you get ready for these 3 exams. So you can see there's 2 midterms, each worth 30% of the grade, and then there's a final exam, which is worth 40%. Now, before we get to each of these tests, not only will we have all those problem sets, but we'll also review for those particular exams as well. So we'll spend some time getting ready for it. And that way, by the time the test arrives, you should be very well prepared for it. There's also all this other language that the school insists on. You can read through this later on if you want to. Yeah, this all the miscellaneous stuff, let's say. So for our purposes today, I think this is everything that we need to know. All right. All right. What else do we need to know? Oh, here's a question I wanted to ask with the poll. Just this is not to do with the class actually. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is more about the current situation. Is anyone here taking actual in-person classes? That's what this next poll is all about. Oh, wait a minute. Did that work? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, so it's still a fairly small percentage. Yeah, I guess nobody really knows what's going on. I'm thinking that the schools are probably hoping that we'll be back to normal in the fall, but there's no guarantee of that. But for right now, I was kind of wondering because I keep getting emails from the school, and from what I understand, they won't even let you on the campus unless you can prove that you have an in-person class. Like if I wanted to go down there and visit the library or something, I couldn't do it because I'm not actually teaching in person. So they're really being very, very strict about who's allowed to walk around on that campus. So I guess there's a reason for that, but okay. So about 22% of you are actually taking in-person classes. All right, well, I guess that's about the same as last fall. Anyway, so in the meantime, I think what we should probably do right now is take a look at our very first chapter of this course, which is chapter 3, as you saw in the syllabus. And that will be our introduction to the economic problem. Now, oh, one more thing I almost forgot to mention. The classes are being recorded. And here's the thing about the recordings. The recordings take up a lot, and I mean a lot of space. And I'm not positive that Blackboard is able to hold all of this information. So just as a precaution, what I'm actually doing here is I'm putting the videos in my YouTube account. Okay. So in other words, if you want to watch the videos, what you have to do is come over here to YouTube and search for my name, and that will take you to my account. And what you're going to find is a bunch of playlists that have been set up for all the different classes that I'm teaching. And your class notes should be in one of them. Oh boy. Yeah, all right. It's here. As soon as we get one video in your playlist, it should pop up on the screen. But no matter what happens, your video is on my website. Okay. What they'll do is they'll have them all listed separately, and then they're also going to show up in your playlist so that you can easily find it without having to search through all these other videos that I make. So don't be surprised if you don't see your videos on Blackboard. By the way, oh, there's another question that I can ask. Hold on a second. This is more out of curiosity than anything else. Do your other classes store their videos on Blackboard? Okay, let's find out. Hold on a second. Aha, so it is possible. You know what? That's all right. I mean, I guess I'll look into it. How about that? I'll tell you what, I'll investigate this because I'm not a technical person at all. And I'm just worried that if I keep putting videos in there, it'll somehow blow up the whole system. So I'll look and see. I'll put them on my YouTube account no matter what. And if it turns out that it's also possible to put them in Blackboard, I'll do that as well because it might be more convenient for you, but just be aware that they're also always going to be stored on my YouTube account. So I'll let you know what happens with that. I'll call the school and see what they say about this because, technology makes me nervous. It always goes wrong for me. And so I don't want to do anything to mess it up. So I'll look into that little detail for you. All right. Anyway, so I think that's all we need to know. So why don't we start with the new material, Chapter 3, the economic problem. So we'll go through this today. And of course, if you have any questions, you can ask them by turning on your microphone, or else there's this chat room up here. And when somebody does put something in the chat room, it starts to flash orange so that I notice it and I can answer your questions. It has the capability of, you can ask the questions that everybody can see, but you can also ask them privately so that nobody else sees it. And know that it works that way. And so other than that, yes, if you want anything else, if you need to know something, like I said, you can just get into your microphone, or else you can use the chat room. Okay, so let's see what this is all about. So the economic problem refers to the notion that resources, now already we have to do a little explanation here. What are resources? Resources are things that we use to produce goods and services. So let me just do a little side detour here. Resources are used to produce consumer goods and services. These are classified as, okay, we have land, labor, and capital. Those are typically the three. And then some books also include something called entrepreneurship. So why don't we quickly go through these and see what they represent. Now the word land does not literally mean just land. Land means natural resources, including land. Labor is pretty much what it sounds like, physical and mental labor. Capital means physical equipment, machinery, computers, buildings, you name it. Anything that's being physical equipment that's being used to produce goods and services is called capital. And then entrepreneurship means this means that entrepreneurship means bringing together resources to produce goods and services in order to earn profits. So those are the so-called resources that we have available to us that we can use to produce goods and services. Okay. Now, the problem though is this. Resources are scarce. So because they're scarce, they must be allocated efficiently in order to maximize the output of goods and services. All right. So in other words, we can't waste anything. If we all want goods and services and we want as many as possible, the only way that's ever going to happen is if these resources are used very efficiently. Now, as it turns out, of course, in a capitalist system, we have a very powerful incentive to use these resources efficiently, because if we don't, then we find ourselves going out of business and unable to continue producing goods and services. So in other words, in this type of system, the profits accrue to companies who are able to produce goods and services as efficiently as possible. And this maximizes the efficiency of our resource use, but it also means that people have the maximum possible number of goods and services at the lowest possible cost. So that works out rather well. Okay, but ultimately, we run up to one big problem here. The problem is that people want more things than they can really have. In other words, the things that we want are pretty much unlimited, whereas the resources needed to make those items are limited. So that means no matter what happens, choices have to be made as to how much of these goods and services to produce, and how to determine who actually receives them. Okay, now what we're going to do here is already right off the bat, we're going to introduce our first graph of the semester. So economics is heavily based on graphs. Okay, as you get into more advanced courses, you'll see that gradually these graphs will give way to equations, but at this level, a lot of important concepts can be illustrated with graphs. Okay, so we want to get into the habit of drawing these graphs and especially understanding what they're telling us. All right, so here we're going to create something called the Production Possibilities Frontier, or from now on, we can simply refer to it as the PPF. Okay, so what is this telling us? All right, well, let's see. Let me just quickly show you what it looks like. So we're going to use the example of Starbucks because everybody loves Starbucks. Okay, that's just the way it is. So here what we're seeing is on this graph, on the vertical axis, we have the quantity of espressos that are being produced in a Starbucks. And on the horizontal axis, we have the quantity of lattes. Now, we know that these two drinks are very similar to each other. What do they both have in common? In other words, if you were to make a latte or an espresso, what do you need for both of them? Okay, who's got an idea about that? I'll give you a hint. It starts with a C.
Coffee beans?
Coffee beans, you got it. Yes, exactly. The difference is that the latte has foam milk in it and the espresso does not. Espresso is just pure caffeine. That's what it is. It's a little tiny shot. You have that when you need to study for 18 hours in a row. Or else if you just enjoy that taste. The latte has a lot of foam milk in it. And so they're similar but not identical products. But presumably in a Starbucks, they can easily make both of them. And so what this is showing us is the combinations of both that we are able to produce with the resources that we have available to us. And so this is coming from a chart right here, where what I've done is I've listed all the different combinations of espressos and lattes that we can make in, let's say, an hour in a Starbucks with the equipment that they have and the workers that they have. So if we only want to make espressos, we can have 28 of them. If we only want to make lattes, we can have 30 of them. And then we have all these other intermediate combinations. Now, the curve is just basically it's been set up to connect all these points. You'll see that A is in the beginning, right up in the top. A represents all espressos, 28 of them. Down here at the bottom, we have G, which represents all lattes, 30 of them. And then these are all the other combinations. Okay, so we go down to the right. And the key to the whole thing here, this is what we're trying to focus on, is that what happens as I make more lattes? In other words, can I have more of both? No, why not? Because I only have a fixed amount of resources available to me. Let's say I'm in a Starbucks again. I've only got so much coffee in the store. There's only so much milk. and I've got so many cups and I've got these machines in front of me. So if I'm at point A, I'm making 28 espressos. Can I then decide to make 28 espressos and 28 lattes? That's it. That's exactly right. The more lattes we make, the less espressos we can make. In other, making more lattes requires us to sacrifice some espressos because we only have so much material in the store. Now, this is not very different than the situation you find yourself in. You go into the store and do you have unlimited amounts of money in your wallet? No. So suppose you went to the store with the intention of buying, let's say, sodas and chips. Okay, you need snacks for the Super Bowl, and you're like, listen, I need to buy a bunch of sodas and I need to buy a bunch of chips. Can you have unlimited quantities of both of them? No. What can you do though? What do you have to do? Suppose you brought $100 with you. You can now find some combination of sodas and chips that are worth no more than $100. So you could actually create one of these diagrams that represent how many of each you can afford to buy. Okay. And that would help you understand how much of each you can afford. And you would have to make the decision what would be the best combination of sodas and chips to buy. Now, you wouldn't, for example, buy only chips, would you? Why not?
You need soda.
You need something to drink. Otherwise, look, think how salty your mouth is going to get if you don't have any sodas. On the other hand, what if you would never just buy all sodas? Why not?
Because you're hungry.
That's right. You've got to eat too. So you need some of each. So you have to make that decision. So the wallet determines how much of each you can buy, but you have to make a judgment call as to how much you actually want of each, limited by how much you can spend. So something like that is happening here, except here this is production rather than consumption. So the amount of equipment that we have, the amount of coffee that we have, and all the rest puts a limit on how much of each we can make. Now, depending on what the customers order, we can produce any of these different combinations of espressos and lattes. But the trick here, or the whole point of this, is that if the customers ask for more lattes, we have to make fewer espressos. We cannot simultaneously make more of both. So this is what the curve is actually showing us, that to have more of one, we need to cut back on the other one. So there's going to be a trade-off between how much of one product we can make versus the other one. Now, what's also important here to note is this. Well, all right, well, we'll get to that in a second. I just want to show you the curve. We're going to do some calculations in a minute, but all of the points in this curve represent efficient production. In other words, if you're on this curve, any one of these points, we can say that each point on the curve represents maximum efficiency. Now, there's nothing that's going to waste. I'm standing there making these drinks and I'm concentrating and I'm not messing around. I'm not on my cell phone and I'm not spilling the coffee beans or anything. I'm just using all my resources to make as many of each product that I can. So if that's the case, though, what would you say about a point like H? What might that represent? All right, well, let's think about it this way. What I can do, if I choose to do so, if I'm at H, if you notice, I have the ability to either make more espresso without sacrificing any lattes, or I can make more espressos without sacrificing lattes. That's right, exactly. Here, if you're at H, you are wasting resources. Because without giving up more of one good, you can make more of it. In other words, I can make more lattes without giving up any espressos, and I can make more espressos without giving up any lattes. That means that I'm goofing around. Something is not right. I'm wasting resources. So here, production is inefficient. Now, if I keep this up, let's say I'm the owner of this Starbucks, but I'm not the hardest working person in the world. What happen to me in the long run? What's the likely consequence of inefficient production?
You're gonna get fired.
That's right. Or else, if I'm the owner, I'm going to go out of business. This is not what we want to see. Okay. This is the opposite of what we want to see. That's right, because your profits will go down, and eventually you might find yourself losing money, and then you'll eventually have to close the store. Now, on the other hand, look at this point I. Now, that's a wonderful point to be at. Look at that. You've got more lattes than you have at B, and yet you have the same number of espressos. And you also can think of this as having the same number of lattes as E, but yet more espressos. So why don't we try to produce up here? And well, it's kind of a trick question. We can't produce here because we don't have enough resources. Ideally, we'd like to be at I, but it's not possible. Even if we work as efficiently as possible, even if we use everything as efficiently as we can, no time is wasted, no resources are wasted. So this point is said to be unattainable. Now, having said that, imagine that next week the boss comes in, says, you know what? We just decided to upgrade our equipment. That espresso machine you were using was so outdated that I'm buying a brand new one. And the brand new one is much quicker than the one you've been using. Aha, now something important has changed. Is it possible that all of a sudden we might now be able to reach point I? Sure, because what was the holdup before? Well, we didn't have enough coffee to go move out here. We didn't have enough milk, but maybe the problem was that the machine was very inefficient. And now all of a sudden we can have more of both. So as a profit-making company, we're constantly striving to increase our output. How do we do that? By increasing efficiency and productivity. Among the many ways we can do that is to invest in more advanced equipment. Also, what if the person working here hasn't been properly trained? And all of a sudden, they're shown a quick trick that makes it easier and quicker to make lattes and espressos. Could that also move us towards point I? Of course. So in other words, over time, this curve could actually change. In fact, if we keep improving our efficiency, what can eventually happen, let me show you what that would lead to. So let's say right now, this is the point I we were just talking about. If we improve the efficiency of our equipment, if we increase people's training who work in the store, the entire curve could actually shift out. Oh, for God's sake, look at this notification I just got. It's Groundhog Day. Well, what does that mean when it's snowing on February the 2nd? Does that mean that spring won't start until July? I don't remember how that works. But anyway, the entire curve shifts out, which indicates we can make more of both goods. And this is brought about by increased efficiency or productivity, or more resources. In other words, suppose we get our hands on more coffee. or more milk. So either more efficiency or more resources means the curve shifts out and we can now make more of both. And of course, you know what that does to our profits. So profit-making firms are continuously striving to increase their output. Of course they are. That's how they make money. It's kind of like if you look at flash drives, what keeps happening to flash drives over time? Like the one that's stuck in your and plugged in to your laptop right now. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe you haven't been buying them long enough, but what do you suppose they were like 10 years ago compared to now? Well, all right, I'll tell you since you don't remember. They had less memory. Oh, here we go. Smaller storage. Yes, exactly. They had less storage on them than they do now. And in most cases, they were even more expensive. So, how does this happen? How is it possible that we keep getting better and better and they were slower? Yes. So, what's happening is that the companies that make them are experiencing this exact same situation. They're improving the quality of their products. And by doing so, they're able to produce a better product at a lower price. And what happens to their profits? They go up. Okay, so this is why all these wonderful devices that we have at our fingertips have been produced for us because of profits. And so all these companies like Apple and Amazon and all the rest, the reason why they're so crazy successful is because they're able to continuously produce better and better products that we want to buy. And so you can visualize a curve for Apple. It's the same exact situation. You could have MacBook Pros up here and iPads down here, and you can see they keep improving their ability to make them and thereby keep improving their profits. Okay, now, so the PPF, as we know, represents all the efficient points of output. Inside the curve, we have wasteful production, which it can't last for long. In a very ferociously efficient economy like we have, companies that are inefficient will eventually go out of business. Okay. So what we're going to do here, though, is think about the short period of time when we don't have the time to increase our productivity. We're going to assume that we're stuck with this curve. Okay, this is what we're able to produce. And so what has to happen now is that we have to make a decision as to which point to produce on. Okay, so in other words, we're going to end up on either A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, not H. Forget H. We can't reach I as much as we'd like to. We have to decide which one of these makes the most sense. Now, that'll depend on a lot of factors, like for especially the cost or the price, rather, of at which we can sell the espressos versus the lattes. But there's more going on to it than just that. What we're going to do now is take a close look at this notion of what we're going to call, let me see. There it is, opportunity cost. Now, if you were to make up a list of the most important concepts in economics, this has to be close to the top of the list. Opportunity cost, especially in microeconomics. Is that a bear in that room or a very large dog? I figure it's a big dog.
That was my cat.
Oh,
Sorry.
no. Oh, he's huge.
Yeah.
Just for a second there, I saw it really looked like a bear.
Yeah.
Really, he's really fluffy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very fluffy.
But you know, cats don't like to be ignored. That's why he did that, you know.
Yeah.
He's like, what's going on here? You're not paying attention to me. All right. Well, anyway, so opportunity cost in a nutshell is the value of the best alternative choice that is sacrificed when you make a decision. Now, every time you make a choice, because resources are limited, if you choose to buy one thing, you have to sacrifice something else. If a company chooses to produce one product, they have to give up the ability to make another product. So, for example, just in this Starbucks case, in order to make one more latte, Starbucks must sacrifice the ability to make some espressos. The value of these espressos that we sacrificed is the opportunity cost of making more lattes. Okay, in other words, if we decide to increase our output of lattes, it's going to come at the expense of some of our espressos. So what we say here is that the value of the espressos that we have to give up is the opportunity cost of making more lattes. Does that make sense? Given that we have a limited amount of resources and we know that we can't have more of both, the only way we can have more lattes is to have less espressos. So in economics, we say that the value of the espressos that we had to give up is the opportunity cost of making more lattes. And it works in both directions too. Let me just add that to the next slide. In order to make one more espresso, we have to make some or give up some of its lattes. The value of these sacrificed lattes is the opportunity cost of making more espressos. So it works in both directions. In order to have more of one, we have to have less of the other. And it's the same thing, like I said, when you go to the store. If you buy more sodas with that $100, you have to give up some of your potato chips. And so the value of those potato chips is what you're giving up. We think of that as an opportunity cost. Now, here's a real world example that you might be familiar with. Suppose that you're a high school student and you decide to attend college. Of course, you all know, you've been there, you're right there now. And suppose that it costs you 60 grand a year to go to college. We call this in economics an explicit cost because you're actually paying for this. It's coming out of your pocket. Somebody is writing a check to the school for $60,000. But if you do go to college, what, among many other things, what are you giving up the opportunity to do? See, this is what could you have been doing right now instead of being in school? Suppose you said to yourself, what the heck, I don't need college. What could you have done? Working, yes. Now, well, that's true too. You could have invested the 60 grand, although it was probably your parents' money, so maybe not. But yes. Now, of course, or you could start your own business. So let's just say that you could have worked at Starbucks and made $25,000 a year full time. That sounds about right. So the money that you are not earning at Starbucks, it's not actually coming out of your pocket, but it is something that you had to give up. And so an economist would say that this is an opportunity cost, which is worth $25,000. And sometimes we call this an implicit cost because while it is a true cost, it isn't actually coming out of your pocket. Now, that being the case, why did you come to college anyway when you could have been at Starbucks? What was the thinking behind that? Man, all this expense, I'm spending 60 grand a year. I'm giving up the opportunity to work at Starbucks. Why would you do that? That's right. In the long run, you're going to make a lot more money by having a college degree. In fact, studies have shown that the increase in your salary from having a college degree could be something like $1 million during your lifetime. So it's a lot of money. It might take a while for it to pay for itself. And there's other benefits too. Of course, you're going to have a choice of better jobs, like you're saying here. You might work in, you might become the CEO of a large corporation instead of working in Starbucks, and so you'll have more satisfaction. And there's a pride factor here too. Let's face it. if you didn't have a college degree, you would probably feel a little embarrassed for the rest of your life because, let's face it, it's not something that you want to be in a position like that. It's a pride thing as well. You're like, wow, man, I'm a college grad. I can do anything. It also opens up the doors to more advanced education as well. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but there are costs. There's very expensive costs. So you have to think of it as a very big upfront investment, and then the benefits will make themselves available to you over your lifetime. So it's like a long-term investment. But when decisions are made, we can't ignore this either. So if you get into a finance course, for example, you'll see that when a corporation tries to decide what to do with their money, like let's say Starbucks decides to develop a new type of coffee drink. They decide to invest $1 million developing something that they don't have now. What that they have to think about is not only the likelihood of this product being successful, but what else could they have been doing with that $1 million? And that is the opportunity cost. So they can't ignore that when they make these decisions. So it's very important to be aware of the existence of opportunity costs whenever we make a decision. Otherwise, we're bound to make the wrong decisions. Okay, now here's a quick, simple example. Suppose we have a farmer. He owns a plot of land in which he could either grow 100,000 bushels of wheat or 100,000 bushels of corn. So if he chooses to go with the wheat, the value of the corn that he's not growing represents his opportunity cost. Or if he chooses only to grow corn, then his opportunity cost is the wheat, the value of the wheat that he was not able to grow. And so, of course, the farmer is going to choose the crop that will maximize his profits. Hopefully, the opportunity cost won't be more than the revenues from the crop that he does choose to grow. All right. Now, back to Starbucks. Now, let's look at this chart for a minute. Here we go. So here's what we're going to do. Suppose that we are at point A. Well, actually, no. We're going to start here at the bottom. Let's see. Oh, no. All right. So what I want you to do is see how opportunity cost is actually calculated. Now, the book makes the point here that sometimes these opportunity costs are referred to as marginal costs. But what I want you to see is how these numbers are actually calculated. So let's go back to our graph for a second. Just so we can visualize what's going on here. Let me just grab a copy of this. Otherwise, it's going to be very confusing what we're doing here. Let's see. I'll tell you. Let me just sneak it in here. All right. So imagine that right now we're currently producing just espressos. And that means we have 28 espressos. I'll call it E, and 0 lattes. All right. 28 espressos, 0 lattes. Point B represents, let's see. Oh, it's way up here. I'm going to copy this too. I don't want to keep scrolling back and forth 100,000 times. Okay, so at point A, we have 20 espressos and no lattes. At point B, we have 26 espressos and 5 lattes. Okay, so we make the decision to move from point A to B. What's going on here? Okay, we gain 5 lattes, but what also is going on here? What's happening? We sacrifice, yes, there you go. We also sacrifice 2, yes, 2 espressos. Remember, we can't have more of both. So the way opportunity cost is calculated is that you're going to take whatever is sacrificed. We always define it as the sacrifice good divided by the gained. So therefore, the opportunity cost of one more, or hold on a second. The opportunity cost of producing more lattes equals 2 espressos over 5 lattes, or 0.4 espressos per latte. Okay, so in other words, what it's saying here is that producing one more latte requires the sacrifice of 0.4 espressos. Now, obviously, we can't sacrifice 0.4 espressos, but I mean, the ratio is 0.4. We had to, in order to get 5 more lattes, we had to give up 2 espressos. So we would say that the opportunity cost of each additional latte is 0.4 espressos. All right, does that make sense? Good. So now what we're going to do is see what happens when we go from B to C. All right, so I'm going to, I guess I'll just keep moving along here with these graphs. It's just easier this way. All right, so let's go from B to C. Now B, we have 26 espressos and 5 lattes. At C, we have 23 espressos and 5 lattes. So to move from B to C, what is now the opportunity cost of making more lattes? Remember, it's how much did we sacrifice? We lost 3 espressos and we gained 5 lattes. Or we have a ratio of 0.6 espressos per latte. All right, does that work? Yes, okay. Now just let's say we decide to go from C to D. Okay, so from C to D, let's see. So C has 23 espressos and 5 lattes. Oh, that can't be right. I think I did something wrong up here. Sorry about that. This graph is wrong. This should have been 10 right here. No wonder everyone's confused. Right there. My mistake. Yes, this should have said 10. Okay, that's better. So in other words, you can see that we lost 3 espressos, but we gained 5 lattes. Okay, much better. And that ratio is 0.6. So now, when we go from C to D, at C, we have 23 espressos and 10 lattes. And down here, at point D, we have 19 espressos and 15 lattes. So the opportunity cost of moving between these 2 points how much do we give up? 4. And how much do we gain? 5. So we can continue all the way down. In fact, I have a chart here somewhere that summarizes all these calculations. There it is. So we did these ourselves. You can confirm the rest of these if you want to. So the key to the whole thing is as we move from A to G, we're producing more lattes, fewer espressos. So the marginal or opportunity cost of a latte, this is the key to the whole thing. What's happening to this cost? It's going up. Okay, so that's an important detail. You know, it's fine to calculate the numbers, and that's important, but we also have to understand what this is telling us. In this book, it is, yes. I don't really completely agree with that, but yes, this book is using them interchangeably, which surprises me to no end, but yes, so I'm following along with what they're doing. So this way, if you read the book, it'll be consistent with my slides. Yes, exactly. That definitely needed some clarification. So, I mean, I guess you can make the point. The marginal cost simply means how much does it cost to make one more latte in terms of espresso. So in a way, it can be seen as the same thing, but it's not normally the case that you just use the words interchangeably like that. But anyway, what's important about this is that, and this is what we're really after, as we try to produce more lattes, we have to sacrifice a progressively larger number of espressos. That's the key to the whole thing right there. As we move down the curve, the marginal cost of the latte is going up and up and up. We have to give up more and more espressos. Now, here's the big question. Why is this happening? Because the resources used to produce lattes and espressos are not perfectly interchangeable. In other words, they're close, but they're not identical. So in other words, what's going to start happening is that the resources are not perfectly aligned with each other. In other words, there's different things going on with the two products. And also maybe the person who's running the machine is not quite as efficient at making lattes as espressos. There's a lot of possibilities here, but normally this is what happens is we try to produce more of one product. We end up with less and less of the other product, but the amount that we lose is growing, and in fact, quite rapidly. Now, how can you tell, by the way, by looking at this graph that this is happening? Just visually looking at the graph, the fact that it's a curve, the bottom line here is that if you look at this curve, as we move to the right, the curve is becoming steeper. And in fact, the slope of this curve equals the marginal or opportunity cost of lattes. So the slope, you can see it's getting steeper and steeper and steeper, which means that the marginal cost is growing. That's right. Now, just as a side note here, I want to mention this. I don't think we have this example in these slides, but in an extreme case, let's say that the curve looks like this. And it is possible. The production possibilities frontier doesn't have to be curved. It could actually be a straight line. In this example, you notice how it's a straight line, which means that the slope is constant, which implies the opportunity cost of lattes is also a constant. But that's only going to happen if we have a straight production possibilities frontier. If it's curved, like the one we have, that means we're going to incur increasing opportunity costs. Okay, so let me make a note of that here. Now, this, by the way, this discussion will show up again later on when we start analyzing international trade, because these curves can be very helpful in explaining how and why countries trade with each other. But in the meantime, I just want to point out that when the production possibilities curve, when it is curved, then we incur increasing opportunity costs. When the PPF is a straight line, then we have constant opportunity costs. Okay, now here's a question for you. Under these circumstances, if we have to keep giving up more and more espresso to make more lattes, if customers keep asking for more lattes, what might we do in response to that? How about this? Because, yes, here we go. Make more lattes, but also raise the price. Because, now think about this, while the cost of the coffee beans hasn't changed, we're being asked to sacrifice a lot of espresso as we move down this curve. So the only way we can really compensate ourselves for that is to charge a higher price. So therefore, if customers keep coming in and wanting lattes and lattes and lattes, our best strategy, most likely, would be to raise the price of the lattes and possibly lower the price of the espressos, so that we, instead of being down here somewhere, we can move back up the curve where the sacrifices are not so steep. So yes, this is one of the reasons. In fact, you'll see later on in one of the later chapters that in order for a corporation or any business to make more of a product, they always charge a higher price. And this is one of the reasons why, because they incur increasing opportunity costs. Okay, now this whole example so far has been premised on the idea that we're starting at A and working our way down the curve and making more lattes. What if we had the opposite scenario? What if we had started at G and customers are suddenly asking for more espressos? Can we calculate opportunity costs if we move in the opposite direction? All right, let's see how that would work. So this is it for this, the lattes. Now let's look at the curve in a different way. We're going to start at the bottom, and let's see. Suppose that we found ourselves at the bottom of this curve. All right, let me copy this again. And we find ourselves at G. And we want to move up to F. We're overproducing our lattes. The customers have decided they want more espressos after all. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this chart so I don't have to keep scrolling back and forth so much. And down here we have 30 lattes and no espressos. At F, we have 8 espressos and 25 lattes. So if I'm moving up in this direction, I'm incurring an opportunity cost because now I'm sacrificing lattes. So now the opportunity cost is in terms of espressos. Now, the way this works, remember, is whatever's being sacrificed goes in the numerator. So in order to move from G to F, I've given up 5 lattes and I've gained 8 espressos. And so therefore, my opportunity cost is 5. Well, I'll just leave it as 5/8. I mean, I suppose I could convert it. This is the decimal equivalent of 0.675. Okay, now you can probably guess what's coming next. We're going to move up the curve to E. All right. Oh boy. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Now we're going to go from F to G. Okay. So we have to calculate now the opportunity cost of espressos. Okay, so I'll remind you that at F, we have 8 espressos and 25 lattes. And at point E, I have 14 espressos and 20 lattes. So what's the opportunity cost? Well, I had to sacrifice 5 lattes in order to make 4 new espressos. Okay, so this is 1.25 lattes are being given up for each extra espresso that we're producing. All right, so we'll continue up the curve. Now, we don't need to do every single one of these calculations, but I'm going to show you the chart in which I've summarized all these opportunity costs. And there they are. So these are the 2 that we just did. And then as you can see, as we move up the curve to make more espressos, the marginal cost is doing what? It's increasing. So in other words, the marginal or opportunity cost increases no matter which good we try to make more of. To make more of one, we have to give up progressively more of the other. All right, so either way, in order to make more espressos, we have to give up progressively more lattes. In order to make more lattes, we have to give up progressively more espressos. So it goes both ways. In other words, for both goods, increasing production incurs progressively higher opportunity costs. And again, I mentioned this before. This is because the curve is, we have a curve rather than a straight line. So whenever we have a curved PPF like this, which is usually the case, this implies increasing opportunity costs. Okay, but I did mention too, and we could work through an example if you wanted to, but when we have a straight line, it doesn't work this way. It would just be a constant opportunity cost for both goods. So what that implies is that the cost of producing a product will rise continuously as we make more of it. And therefore, consumers must expect to pay a higher price to obtain more units of a good. So if we want more of anything, really, we can have it, but we have to expect to pay a higher price for it. And so this is part of the reason for that, because the cost of producing that good keeps going up. So the business they can't survive unless they raise the price to cover their higher costs. Now, what this is building up to, and we'll see this when we get to that chapter, this is sort of a foreshadowing of what's going to happen when we introduce the supply curve, which if you've had economics before, you already know what that is. The supply curve shows how much a corporation or a business is willing to produce of a product at different prices. And you'll notice the supply curve is increasing because, among other things, we have higher opportunity costs as we make more and more of a product. Okay, So anyway, now this production possibilities frontier is a very useful tool for analyzing a lot of situations in micro. And like I mentioned before, it'll show up in any analysis of international trade. So it's a very important idea, but what it does is really help us understand the idea that opportunity costs continue to increase as we make more and more of a product. So now what's going to come next in this book is really what is the heart and soul of all economic analysis. And that would be supply and demand. Yes, you couldn't possibly, if you wrote up a list of the most important concepts in economics, demand and supply would be right at the top of that list. So in this chapter, we're going to see what all this discussion was all about. Why was it so important to introduce this production possibilities frontier? Because like I said, it helps us understand how the supply curve works. So we're going to actually explain what supply and demand are, and we're going to use some graphs on a regular basis throughout the course. So we're going to get a lot of practice drawing graphs, but mostly we're going to understand how supply and demand determine the prices of goods that we see in the marketplace and the quantities that are actually being produced. Once that's done, we can use that to analyze any other situation we might run into throughout the rest of this class. And in fact, in many other classes as well, where economics is involved. So anyway, I think since it's the first day, I think we've been, you may not have been expecting to cover so much material in the first day, but yes, we've got a lot to do and we don't have time to waste. So I think today we'll allow ourselves to stop a few minutes early. And so what I would like you to do, now I'm going to post these notes on Blackboard. And so what I'd like you to do is start flipping through the chapter 4 notes. And if you're not sure what's going on in chapter 3, go back and reread it and see if you have any questions, which we can then go over on Friday. Okay. So in the meantime, I guess I'll just see you all on Friday.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Excuse me, so the homework is
Oh.
just to read chapter 4, right?
Yes, I'll put the notes up there on Blackboard, and yeah, just take a look at chapter 4. That's all you have to do.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye.